The stars were quiet that night, their light dimmed by the weight of centuries. Jacob leaned against the cold metal railing of the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the endless void outside. He was just another cog in the vast machine of the Galactic Alliance, a worker bee tasked with maintaining the ships that kept civilization running. But tonight, something felt different. Something in the silence tugged at him, like a whisper from the past he couldn't quite hear. Jacob wasn't one for mysteries. He preferred the orderly hum of engines and the predictable rhythm of circuits. Yet here he was, staring into the darkness, thinking about Earth. It wasn't supposed to happen. Not now. Not ever. Earth was forbidden, erased from maps, and buried under layers of warnings. Everyone knew the rule. Don't awaken the humans. They had been dangerous once, too clever and too destructive. Their wars had nearly torn apart the galaxy before they disappeared behind impenetrable barriers, and no one dared disturb them since. But Jacob had found something he shouldn't have. Earlier that day, while repairing damaged archives aboard the Aurora Asterisk, he'd stumbled upon a set of coordinates hidden deep within corrupted files. At first, he thought it was a glitch, some remnant of old programming. But as he pieced together fragments of data, a pattern emerged. The numbers pointed to Earth. Ancient, forgotten Earth. He hadn't told anyone yet, not even Clara, the historian who spent her days poring over relics of the past. She would probably scold him for snooping where he didn't belong. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery mattered. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something deeper, a longing to understand what had gone wrong all those years ago. Thinking about jumping ship, Clara's voice cut through his thoughts. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her sharp gaze locked on him. Her dark hair framed her face, and there was a faint smirk playing at the corners of her lips. Not exactly, Jacob replied, turning back to the viewport. Just wondering. Wondering what? Clara stepped closer, leaning against the railing beside him. You've got that look again. The one you get when you're hiding something. Jacob hesitated. He trusted Clara, but this wasn't just idle curiosity. This was dangerous territory. If anyone found out about the coordinates, it could mean trouble for both of them. Still, he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. I found something, he said finally, lowering his voice. Coordinates to Earth. Clara stiffened. For a moment, she didn't say anything, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a long breath, shaking her head. You really do have a death wish, don't you? It's not like that, Jacob protested. I think there's more to it. Something we don't know. What if there are answers down there? What if we can learn from their mistakes? And what if we make things worse? Clara shot back. Her tone softened slightly as she added, We're talking about humanity, Jacob. Do you really want to risk waking them up? Jacob didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned back to the viewport, watching the stars flicker in the distance. The truth was, he didn't know what he wanted. All he knew was that the coordinates called to him, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. And deep down, he couldn't ignore the possibility that Earth might hold the key to something greater, something worth risking everything for. Let me show you, he said quietly. Maybe then you'll understand. Clara studied him for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But if we get caught, I'm blaming you. As they walked back toward the archive bay, neither of them noticed the faint shimmer of a surveillance drone hovering nearby, its sensors recording every word. The archive bay was dimly lit, the soft hum of machinery filling the silence. Jacob moved quickly, his fingers flying over the console as he pulled up the fragmented data he'd discovered earlier. Clara stood behind him, arms crossed, her brow furrowed as she watched the screen flicker with lines of code and strange symbols. Okay, Jacob said, pointing to a series of numbers glowing faintly on the display. These are the coordinates I found. They're old, really old, but they match Earth's location. Clara leaned in closer, squinting at the screen. And you're sure this isn't just some kind of error? Corrupted files can do weird things. Unsure, Jacob replied, tapping another command. A grainy image appeared, a map of Earth's surface, dotted with markers. See these? These aren't random. They're locations of underground facilities, cryogenic storage units, maybe even survivors. Clara straightened, her expression shifting from skepticism to unease. Survivors? You think there are still humans down there? It's possible, Jacob said, his voice tinged with excitement. If they were put into stasis before the barriers went up, they could still be alive. Frozen, but alive. Clara didn't respond immediately. She stepped back, rubbing her temples as if trying to process what she'd just heard. The idea of living humans, people who had been asleep for centuries, was both fascinating and terrifying. Humanity's legacy was one of brilliance and destruction, innovation and chaos. What would happen if they woke up now? This is dangerous, Clara finally said, breaking the silence. Even thinking about going to Earth is risky. If anyone finds out. They won't, Jacob interrupted, his tone firm. Not if we're careful. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but don't you want to know the truth? Don't you want to see what's down there? Clara hesitated. She did want to know. As a historian, her entire life had been dedicated to piecing together fragments of the past, trying to understand how humanity had fallen so far. But this wasn't just research. It was tampering with history itself, and the consequences could be catastrophic. What if we find something we can't handle? She asked quietly. What if waking them up makes things worse? We don't have to wake anyone up, Jacob assured her. We'll go, look around, gather information. That's it. No risks, no harm. Clara stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. You're really set on this, aren't you? Yes, Jacob said without hesitation. I need your help, Clara. You know more about human history than anyone else on this ship. If we're going to do this, I need someone who understands what we're dealing with. Clara bit her lip, torn between caution and curiosity. Finally, she nodded. Fine. But we do this my way. No shortcuts, no reckless moves. We stick to the plan, or we walk away. Deal, Jacob said, relief washing over him. As they began preparing for their secret mission, neither of them noticed the faint glow of the surveillance drone hovering near the ceiling. Its sensors recorded every word, every movement, sending the data to an unknown recipient. Somewhere far away, someone, or something, was watching. Over the next few days, Jacob and Clara worked tirelessly, gathering supplies and modifying a small shuttle to bypass Earth's defenses. It wasn't easy. The barriers surrounding the planet were designed to keep intruders out, and breaking through them required ingenuity and a lot of luck. Clara spent hours poring over ancient texts, searching for clues about the technology used to seal Earth off. Meanwhile, Jacob tinkered with the shuttle's systems, adding layers of camouflage to avoid detection. Despite their efforts, tension lingered between them. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire, while Jacob remained convinced that the answers they sought were worth the risk. They argued often, their voices hushed but heated, each trying to convince the other of their perspective. You're too eager, Clara snapped one evening as they reviewed their plans. This isn't some adventure story. One wrong move, and we're dead, or worse. And you're too scared, Jacob shot back. If we don't try, we'll never know. Isn't that why you became a historian? To uncover the truth. Clara opened her mouth to reply, then closed it again, frustration flashing in her eyes. She hated when he was right. By the time they were ready to leave, the weight of what they were about to do hung heavy in the air. As they boarded the shuttle, Clara glanced back at the Aurora *, wondering if they'd ever return. Jacob, on the other hand, felt a spark of hope, a belief that somewhere on Earth, buried beneath layers of dust and time, lay the key to a brighter future. Neither of them knew just how wrong, and how right, they would turn out to be. The shuttle hummed softly as it drifted through the vast emptiness of space. Jacob sat at the controls, his hand steady but his mind racing. Beside him, Clara stared out the small viewport, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and doubts. They had left the Aurora hours ago, slipping away under the cover of darkness. No one had noticed their departure, or so they hoped. The stolen equipment hidden in the shuttle's cargo bay would help them bypass Earth's defenses, but it wasn't foolproof. If they were caught, there would be no second chances. "Are you sure about this?" Clara asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet but carried an edge of tension. "We're not just breaking rules here, Jacob. We're risking everything." Jacob glanced at her, then back at the console. "I'm sure. We've been over this 100 times. What's the worst that could happen?" Clara gave him a sharp look. "The worst? How about starting another war, or unleashing something we can't control? You keep saying we'll only look around, but what if we stumble into something bigger than us?" Jacob sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew she was right to worry, but he couldn't let fear stop him now. Not when they were so close. "We'll be careful," he said firmly. "We go in, gather information, and leave. No risks, just like we planned." Clara didn't respond. She turned back to the viewport, watching the stars blur past as the shuttle accelerated. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was more dangerous than either of them realized. Hours passed, and the shuttle approached Earth's outer barriers. Jacob activated the cloaking device, holding his breath as the ship slipped through the first layer of defenses. The technology worked perfectly, masking their presence from the sensors that guarded the planet. But as they moved closer, warning alarms began to flash on the console. "What's happening?" Clara asked, her voice rising with panic. "It's okay," Jacob said quickly, though his own heart was pounding. "The system's detecting anomalies, but it doesn't know where we are. Just stay calm." He adjusted the controls, rerouting power to the cloaking device. The alarms faded, and the shuttle continued forward. For a moment, both of them exhaled in relief. But their relief was short-lived. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, a bright light flared ahead of them. A patrol ship emerged from the clouds, its sleek design unmistakable. It belonged to the Enforcers, the ones tasked with upholding the One Rule. "Kale," Clara whispered, recognizing the ship's markings. Kale was known for his strict adherence to the law and his relentless pursuit of rule breakers. If he caught them, they were finished. "Hold on," Jacob said, gripping the controls. He veered the shuttle sharply to the side, narrowly avoiding a blast from the patrol ship's weapons. The cabin shook violently, throwing Clara against her seat. "We need to lose him," she shouted, clutching the armrests. Jacob nodded, his focus razor-sharp. He guided the shuttle into a steep dive, weaving between jagged mountains and thick clouds. The patrol ship followed, its engines roaring as it closed the gap. Jacob pushed the shuttle to its limits, performing maneuvers that made Clara's stomach churn. Finally, they reached a dense forest below, the trees forming a natural shield. Jacob cut the engines, letting the shuttle glide silently into a clearing. The patrol ship hovered above, searching for any sign of them, but the dense canopy hid their position. For several tense minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the patrol ship's engines. When the sound finally faded, Jacob let out a shaky breath. "That was too close," he muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Clara glared at him, her face pale but determined. "You think? We almost got killed, Jacob. And for what? A few old ruins." "It's not just ruins," Jacob snapped, his frustration boiling over. "It's answers. Don't you see that? If we can figure out what happened to humanity, maybe we can fix things. Maybe we can make the galaxy better." Clara opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. Instead, she looked away, staring out the viewport at the overgrown wilderness around them. The truth was, she wanted to believe him. She wanted to hope that their journey wasn't in vain. As the shuttle rested quietly in the clearing, neither of them noticed the faint glow of surveillance drones hidden among the trees. Their movements had been recorded, their presence detected. Somewhere far above, Cal watched the footage, his expression unreadable. Earth was supposed to remain undisturbed, but now 2 intruders had broken the covenant, and Cal wasn't about to let them escape without consequences. The forest was eerily quiet as Jacob and Clara stepped out of the shuttle, their boots crunching softly on the moss-covered ground. The air smelled damp and earthy, filled with the scent of leaves and something faintly metallic. Above them, the sky was a patchwork of gray clouds, letting through only slivers of sunlight that danced across the treetops. "This place feels wrong," Clara whispered, her eyes scanning the dense woods. She clutched a handheld scanner in one hand, its screen glowing faintly as it searched for signs of human activity. "It's too quiet, like it's waiting for something." Jacob adjusted the straps of his backpack, trying to ignore the unease creeping up his spine. "Maybe it's just been a long time since anyone's been here," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Even he could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on them. They moved cautiously through the trees, following the coordinates Jacob had uncovered. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the planet itself was resisting their presence. The map on Clara's scanner showed they were close, just a few hundred meters away from one of the markers. But the closer they got, the more unnatural the surroundings seemed. The trees grew taller, their twisted branches forming an impenetrable canopy overhead. Strange symbols were carved into the trunks, faded but still visible. Some looked like warnings, others resembled maps or instructions. Clara stopped to examine one, running her fingers over the grooves. "These aren't natural," she murmured. "Someone, or something, put these here." "Could be the machines," Jacob suggested. "They were supposed to clean up Earth after the humans disappeared. Maybe they left markers." Clara shook her head. "No, these are older. Look at the wear. They've been here for centuries." Before Jacob could respond, the ground beneath them shifted slightly. A low rumble echoed through the forest, growing louder with each passing second. The earth began to crack, splitting open to reveal a hidden entrance below. Metal stairs descended into darkness, illuminated faintly by glowing panels set into the walls. "Well," Jacob said, peering down into the abyss. "Looks like we found it." Clara hesitated, gripping the edge of the opening. "This is it, isn't it? Whatever happens next, there's no turning back." Jacob nodded. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy. Let's just stick to the plan. Look around, gather data, and get out." Taking a deep breath, Clara followed him down the stairs. The air grew colder as they descended, carrying a faint metallic tang. The walls were smooth and polished, lined with conduits and cables that pulsed with faint light. It was clear this facility had been built to last, and it had. At the bottom, they entered a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of cryogenic pods. Each pod was transparent, revealing the figures inside. Men, women, children, all frozen in time, their faces peaceful as if they were merely sleeping. Clara froze, staring at the sight before her. "They're real," she whispered, her voice trembling. "All this time, they've been here." Jacob walked slowly between the rows, his eyes wide with wonder. "How many do you think there are?" "Thousands," Clara replied, her gaze sweeping across the chamber. "Maybe more." This must have been one of the evacuation sites before the barriers went up. As they explored further, Clara noticed something odd. One of the pods stood apart from the others, its frame marked with intricate designs. A nameplate above it read *Elena*. Unlike the other pods, this one seemed active, its systems humming softly. "Jacob," Clara called, motioning him over. "Look at this. Do you think she's still alive?" Jacob frowned, examining the controls. "Hard to say. The systems are old, but they might still work, if we try to wake her." "We don't have a choice," Clara interrupted, her tone firm. If anyone can tell us what happened, it's her. Jacob hesitated, then nodded. Together, they began working on the pod's interface, bypassing locks and rerouting power. The process was slow and painstaking, but eventually, the pod hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor. Inside lay a woman, her features delicate but strong. Her eyes fluttered open. Unfocused at first, then sharp and alert. For a moment, she simply stared at them, confusion written across her face. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "What year is it?" Clara knelt beside her, speaking gently. "You're safe. My name is Clara, and this is Jacob. We found you in stasis. It's been a very long time." Elena blinked, processing the information. Then, slowly, realization dawned on her face. "The war," she murmured. "It's over, isn't it?" Jacob exchanged a glance with Clara. Neither of them knew how to answer. Before they could speak, Elena sat up, her expression hardening. "You shouldn't have woken me," she said, her voice cold. "You don't understand what you've done." Neither Jacob nor Clara noticed the faint red glow emanating from the walls. Somewhere deep within the facility, ancient systems were reactivating, responding to Elena's presence. And far above, Cal's patrol ship hovered silently, its sensors detecting the sudden surge of energy. Earth was waking up, and it wasn't happy to see them. Elena's words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous. Jacob and Clara exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. The woman before them looked frail, but carried an intensity that made both of them feel small. "What do you mean?" Clara finally asked, her voice soft but steady. "What have we done?" Elena didn't answer right away. She swung her legs over the edge of the pod, wincing as her bare feet touched the cold floor. Her body trembled slightly, unused to movement after centuries of stasis. Clara quickly offered her a blanket from her pack, which Elena accepted with a curt nod. "You don't know," Elena said at last, her tone bitter. "Of course you don't. Why would anyone tell you? They sealed us away for a reason." Jacob stepped closer, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "Sealed you away? What are you talking about? Who did this?" Elena turned to him, her sharp eyes piercing through the dim light. "The machines, the aliens, everyone who feared what we could do. Humanity wasn't just dangerous because of our wars. We were dangerous because we dreamed too big. We pushed too far. And when we fell, they made sure we'd never rise again." Clara frowned, trying to piece together what Elena was saying. "But why wake you up now? Why risk it?" "I didn't ask to be woken," Elena snapped, her voice rising. "You think I wanted this? To wake up to a galaxy that doesn't need me anymore, a galaxy that's afraid of me." Her anger softened slightly as she looked around the chamber, taking in the rows of cryopods. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought, her expression distant. Then she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Listen," she said, her voice quieter now. "I don't know why you're here or what you want, but you need to leave. Now, before it's too late." "Too late for what?" Jacob pressed, unwilling to back down. "What's going to happen?" Elena hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't explain everything. Not yet, but waking me has triggered something ancient. This facility wasn't just a storage site, it was a failsafe, a way to protect Earth if things went wrong." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shuddered. The glow from the walls grew brighter, casting eerie shadows across the room. Alarms began to blare, low and resonant, echoing through the chamber like a warning. "What's happening?" Clara asked, panic creeping into her voice. "The systems are activating," Elena replied, her face grim. "They think Earth is under threat, and now they're preparing to defend it." Jacob grabbed his scanner, checking the readings. "Energy levels are spiking. Whatever this is, it's not stopping." "We need to get out of here," Clara said firmly, grabbing her pack. Now, Elena nodded, standing unsteadily. Follow me. I know this place better than anyone. There's an exit nearby. She led them through the labyrinthine corridors, moving faster despite her weakened state. The walls pulsed with light, and the hum of machinery grew louder with each step. Jacob and Clara followed closely, their hearts pounding as the facility seemed to come alive around them. This isn't good, Jacob muttered, glancing over his shoulder. Something's coming. Elena didn't respond, her focus entirely on reaching the exit. Finally, they reached a large door marked with the same symbols they had seen outside. The sunlight filtering through the trees was harsh and unwelcome as Jacob, Clara, and Elena emerged from the underground facility. The air felt heavier now, charged with tension. Above them, the hum of drones grew louder, their red lights cutting through the shadows like predatory eyes. "We're out," Jacob said, his voice low but edged with urgency. "Now what?" Elena didn't answer immediately. She stood still for a moment, her gaze fixed on the forest around them. Her body language was tense, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. Finally, she turned to them, her expression grim. "We need to move," she said sharply. "They'll be here soon." "Who?" Clara asked, clutching her scanner tightly. "The machines. The aliens." "Both," Elena replied. "And worse, this planet has defenses we can't even imagine. Waking me up triggered them. They won't stop until they've neutralized the threat, or destroyed it." Jacob glanced at Clara, his fear mirrored in her wide eyes. "Neutralized? Does that mean us?" "It means anyone who steps foot on Earth without permission," Elena said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Come on. We don't have much time." She led them deeper into the forest, moving quickly despite her earlier weakness. The ground beneath their feet trembled occasionally, a reminder that the fail-safe systems were still active. Behind them, the distant sound of collapsing structures echoed through the trees, as if the planet itself were reshaping to protect its secrets. As they ran, Clara couldn't help but ask the question burning in her mind. Why didn't they just destroy humanity when they had the chance? Why seal you away instead? Elena slowed slightly, her jaw tightening. Because they needed us, or at least, they thought they did. Humanity's ingenuity was unmatched. Even after everything we'd done, there were those who believed we could rebuild, create something better. But others, they saw us as a risk not worth taking. And now, Jacob asked, struggling to keep up with her pace, what happens if they find us? "They'll make sure we never leave," Elena said flatly. "And they'll erase every trace of this place to ensure no one else tries." Before anyone could respond, a loud whirring noise filled the air. Above them, Cal's patrol ship descended, its sleek form casting a shadow over the group. The drones hovered closer, their weapons trained on the three figures below. "This is Enforcer Cal," a voice boomed from the ship's speakers. "You are in violation of galactic law. Stand down and surrender immediately." Clara froze, her heart racing. "We're caught. What do we do?" Elena's response was immediate. "Run." She darted toward a cluster of rocks nearby, using them as cover while the drones fired warning shots into the ground. Jacob and Clara followed, stumbling over roots and uneven terrain as they tried to evade the relentless pursuit. Cal's voice rang out again, colder this time. "You cannot escape. Surrender now or face termination." Elena ignored him, her focus razor-sharp. She motioned for Jacob and Clara to stay low, then peered around the rocks to assess their situation. The drones were closing in, their movements precise and mechanical. "There," she shouted, pointing to a narrow ravine ahead. "Through there." The trio sprinted toward the opening, sliding down the steep slope as blasts of energy exploded around them. The ravine twisted and turned, offering just enough cover to keep them out of sight. By the time they reached the bottom, the sounds of pursuit had faded slightly. But they weren't safe yet. As they caught their breath, a new voice called out, not from the sky, but from behind them. "You've caused quite a mess," the voice said, calm and commanding. They turned to see a group of humans emerging from the shadows. They wore tattered uniforms and carried makeshift weapons, their expressions hardened by years of survival. Leading them was a man with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. "Daniel." "I'm Daniel," he said, stepping forward. "And you've just woken up the wrong people." Elena stepped in front of Jacob and Clara, her stance defensive. "Stay back. We don't want trouble." Daniel smirked, glancing at the chaos unfolding above. "Trouble's already here. Now tell me, who woke you up?" Jacob hesitated, but Clara spoke up before he could. "It was us. We didn't know what would happen. We just wanted answers." Daniel studied them for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Answers you won't find running from Kale. Come with us. If you want to survive, you'll need allies." Elena looked torn, but the decision was made for her as the sound of approaching drones grew louder. Reluctantly, she gestured for Jacob and Clara to follow Daniel's group into the depths of the forest. Earth had awoken, and its people were ready to fight back. The forest grew darker as Daniel's group led Jacob, Clara, and Elena deeper into its heart. The air was thick with the scent of damp soil and decaying leaves, and the only sounds were their footsteps crunching against the ground and the distant hum of drones still searching overhead. Jacob glanced over his shoulder nervously, half expecting Cal's patrol ship to descend at any moment. "Where are you taking us?" Clara asked, her voice tight with suspicion. She clutched her scanner like a lifeline. The argument between Daniel and Elena grew louder, their voices echoing through the bunker. Jacob and Clara stood silently on the sidelines, unsure of what to do or say. The tension in the room was suffocating, each word a spark threatening to ignite something they couldn't control. "You're making a mistake," Elena said sharply, her hands clenched into fists. "Fighting won't fix anything. It'll only prove the galaxy right about us. And doing nothing will leave us buried forever." Daniel shot back, his voice rising. "Is that what you want? To hide like rats while the rest of the universe moves on without us?" Elena stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "I don't want war. I've seen what it does. To people, to worlds. You think violence will earn us respect. It'll only bring destruction." Daniel stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. "You've been asleep too long, Elena. The galaxy doesn't care about peace. It cares about power. If we don't take a stand now, we'll never have another chance." Before Elena could respond, one of Daniel's followers, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, spoke up. "We don't have time for this. Kel's forces are still out there. They'll find us sooner or later." Daniel nodded, his expression hardening. "He's right. We need to act, and fast. If we hit them before they regroup, we can weaken their hold on Earth." Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Wait, what do you mean hit them? Are you talking about attacking Cal's ship?" "Exactly," Daniel replied, turning to face her. "We can't let them report back to the Alliance. If they do, reinforcements will come. We'll lose our advantage." "That's insane," Clara said, shaking her head. "You'll start a war. Is that really worth it?" "It's not just worth it. It's necessary," Daniel said coldly. "If we don't fight now, humanity will stay locked away forever. Is that what you came here for?" Jacob grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her aside. "We can't stop him," he whispered urgently. "If we try, we'll make things worse. But we can't just stand by and let him do this." Clara hissed back. "This isn't why we came here." "I know," Jacob said, his voice low. "But we don't have a choice. Not yet." Meanwhile, Daniel began organizing his group, marking orders as they prepared for the attack. Weapons were distributed, plans were laid out, and volunteers stepped forward without hesitation. These people weren't afraid. They were ready to fight, no matter the cost. Elena watched silently, her jaw tight with frustration. Finally, she turned to Jacob and Clara. "You two should stay here. This isn't your fight." "We started this," Jacob said firmly. "Whether we wanted to or not. We woke you up. That makes it our responsibility." Alina hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but stay close to me. Things are about to get ugly." Outside, the forest was eerily quiet as Daniel's group moved into position. The patrol ship hovered above, its lights scanning the area below. Kel's voice crackled over the speakers again, warning anyone nearby to surrender. "This is your last chance," Kel said, his tone icy. "Resist, and you will be eliminated." Daniel smirked, raising his weapon. "Let's see how tough you are when we knock you out of the sky." The attack began suddenly, a barrage of homemade explosives and energy blasts lighting up the darkness. The patrol ship rocked violently, its shields flickering under the assault. Kel responded immediately, deploying drones and firing back with precision. Chaos erupted as the battle raged on. Trees splintered and burned, the ground shook with explosions, and the air filled with smoke and screams. Jacob and Clara crouched behind a fallen log, watching in horror as the scene unfolded before them. "This is madness," Clara whispered, clutching Jacob's arm. "We have to stop this." "How?" Jacob asked, his voice strained. "We're outnumbered and outgunned." Nearby, Alina fought alongside Daniel's group, her movements quick and precise. She seemed torn between stopping the violence and ensuring their survival. For every step forward, the cost grew higher. Then, a deafening explosion rocked the battlefield. One of the drones crashed to the ground, sending a wave of fire spreading through the trees. Amid the chaos, Kel's voice roared over the commotion. "You've made your choice," he said, his tone dark. "Now face the consequences." The patrol ship unleashed a devastating blast, obliterating part of the forest and scattering Daniel's fighters. In the confusion, Jacob saw an opportunity, not to fight, but to end the bloodshed. But as he reached for Clara's hand to pull her toward safety, he realized the true cost of awakening humanity. War had returned to Earth, and it wasn't going to stop anytime soon. The battlefield was a nightmare of smoke, fire, and chaos. Trees burned like torches, their charred remains collapsing into the dirt. The patrol ship loomed above, its weapons blazing as Cal's forces retaliated with brutal efficiency. Daniel's group fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. For every step forward, they paid a heavy price. Jacob and Clara huddled behind the shattered remains of a fallen tree, coughing through the thick smoke. Clara's face was streaked with soot, her eyes wide with panic. "This is insane," she gasped, clutching Jacob's arm. "We have to stop this before everyone gets killed." "How?" Jacob asked, his voice barely audible over the roar of explosions. "Daniel won't listen, and Cal's not backing down." Before Clara could respond, Alina appeared beside them, her expression grim. She had a gash on her forehead, and her hands were blackened with ash, but she showed no signs of slowing down. "We need to end this now," she said firmly. "If we don't, there won't be anyone left to fight for." Clara stared at her. "What can we do? We're not soldiers." Alina hesitated, then pointed toward the patrol ship. "Kel's the key. If we can disable this ship, he'll have no choice but to retreat." "And how do we do that?" Jacob asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "There's a weak point near the engines," Alina explained quickly. "If we hit it hard enough, it'll cripple the ship, but we'll need a distraction." Clara shook her head. "A distraction? That means more people getting hurt." "It's the only way," Alina said, her tone sharp. "Do you want to sit here and watch everyone die, or do you want to try something?" Jacob glanced at Clara, seeing the fear in her eyes. He knew she hated the idea, but they couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Finally, he nodded. "All right, what's the plan?" Alina grabbed a small explosive device from her belt and handed it to Jacob. "Take this. Get close to the ship and plant it near the engines. I'll create a diversion to draw Cal's attention." "What about me?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. You stay here and keep an eye out, Elena replied. If things go wrong, you'll need to get out fast. Find somewhere safe to regroup. Before Clara could protest, Elena turned and ran back toward the heart of the battle, shouting orders to Daniel's fighters. Moments later, a loud explosion erupted nearby, drawing Cal's drones away from the patrol ship. It was their chance. Let's go, Jacob said, pulling Clara to her feet. They moved quickly, staying low to avoid detection. The ground beneath them shook with each blast, making it hard to keep their balance. Ahead, the patrol ship loomed larger, its engines glowing faintly in the darkness. As they approached, Jacob spotted the weak point Elena had mentioned, a small vent near the base of the ship. Cover me, he whispered to Clara, handing her a makeshift weapon scavenged from the bunker. Clara nodded, though her hands trembled as she held the weapon. Be careful. Jacob crawled closer to the ship, dodging debris and stray blasts. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached the vent and planted the explosive. He set the timer and scrambled back to Clara, who pulled him behind cover just as the device detonated. A massive explosion rocked the area, sending flames shooting into the sky. The patrol ship shuddered violently, its systems failing as smoke poured from the damaged engines. Above, Cal's voice crackled over the speakers, filled with fury. You've made a grave mistake. This isn't over. The ship began to ascend, retreating into the clouds. Below, the surviving members of Daniel's group cheered, their voices hoarse but triumphant. For a moment, it seemed like they had won. But the victory was short-lived. As the smoke cleared, Daniel stood tall, his expression cold and calculating. He turned to Elena, Jacob, and Clara, his eyes burning with determination. This was just the beginning, he said. Cal will report back to the Alliance. They'll send reinforcements, and when they do, we'll be ready. Elena stepped forward, her voice firm. No, we can't keep fighting like this. Every battle risks exposing us and destroying what's left of Earth. We don't have a choice, Daniel snapped. They'll never let us leave, not unless we force them. Elena shook her head. There's another way. We seal Earth off again, permanently. Cut ourselves off from the galaxy before they destroy us. The group fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Fine, but if we do this, we do it my way. As they prepared to activate Earth's fail-safe systems once more, Jacob and Clara exchanged uneasy glances. They had come to Earth seeking answers, but instead they had unleashed a chain of events that could reshape the galaxy or tear it apart. And as the barriers began to rise again, sealing Earth away from the stars, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's story was far from over. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the galaxy was watching and waiting. The fail-safe system hummed to life, its ancient mechanisms groaning as they activated. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a low, resonant pulse spread outward, rippling through the air like an invisible wave. Above them, the sky darkened as Earth's barriers began to rebuild themselves, sealing the planet off from the rest of the galaxy once more. Jacob stood beside Clara, watching the process unfold with a mix of awe and dread. The shimmering walls of energy rose higher and higher, cutting them off from the stars. It was over. Earth was isolated again, and this time it might stay that way forever. Elena stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face was unreadable, but there was a heaviness in her eyes that spoke volumes. She had fought hard to protect what remained of humanity, but now she looked exhausted, like someone carrying the weight of centuries on her shoulders. It's done, Daniel said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. We're safe. For now. Safe? Clara asked, her tone sharp with disbelief. Is that what you call this? Trapping yourselves here while the galaxy moves on without you? Daniel turned to her, his expression hardening. It's better than being hunted, better than being erased. At least this way, we control our own fate. But at what cost? Jacob chimed in, stepping forward. You've already started a war. What happens when the Alliance sends ships to investigate? When they find out what you've done? They won't. Alina interrupted, her voice firm. The barriers will hold. And even if they don't, we'll be ready. Clara shook her head, frustration bubbling to the surface. You're making the same mistakes all over again. Fighting, hiding, shutting yourselves away. It's not going to fix anything. Humanity deserves better than this, and maybe one day we'll get it, Alina said quietly. But not today. Today, survival is enough. The group fell silent, the enormity of what had just happened settling over them like a heavy blanket. The battle had ended, but the scars would remain, for Earth, for humanity, and for those who had dared to awaken it. As the last traces of the barriers solidified, Jacob turned to Clara. We should go, before it's too late. Clara hesitated, glancing back at Alina and Daniel. They looked so determined, so resolute, but also so lost. She wanted to say something, to offer some kind of hope or reassurance, but no words came. Instead, she nodded and followed Jacob toward the shuttle. The journey back to the Aurora was quiet, the weight of everything they'd seen and done pressing down on them. Neither of them spoke until they were safely aboard the ship, staring out at the now invisible Earth below. What do we tell them? Clara asked softly, breaking the silence. About what happened down there. The truth, Jacob replied after a moment. That we found humans, and that we couldn't save them. Not yet, anyway. Clara sighed, leaning back in her seat. Do you think we'll ever see them again? Do you think they'll rise again? Jacob didn't answer right away. He gazed out at the stars, thinking about everything they had risked, and everything they had lost. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but tinged with hope. Maybe, someday, but next time, I hope we're ready. For them, and for ourselves. As the Aurora drifted away from Earth, the galaxy seemed unchanged. But deep inside, both Jacob and Clara knew the truth. Humanity wasn't gone. It was waiting. Waiting for the day when it could rise again, stronger and wiser than before. Until then, the stars would have to wait.